This is a meeting of the Finance Subcommittee. We're going to be reviewing the Personnel Ordinance, Chapter 56, which had been referred to the subcommittee by a motion of Councilor Elliott. We'll begin with a roll call.
Chairman Mendonça.
Here.
Councilor Elliott.
Here.
Councilor Martin.
Here.
3 present.
As aforementioned, this is to review the Personnel Ordinance, Chapter 56, and the issue came up during some contract negotiations we initially held in executive session. Those minutes have been made public, and it was subsequently referred to the subcommittee by Councilor Elliott. If Councilor Elliott would like to add any more.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I did file this motion, and the issue did come up during negotiations for the auditor, and so I thought it was important for us to take a look at the entire ordinance. I did go through it, but most particularly, what I think we need to do is there are automatic pay increases in this ordinance that I don't think are warranted. When the budget is presented, these increases are factored in as a result of this ordinance, and I think it's important, in order to make the budget process more transparent, that these pay increases, these automatic pay increases, be removed and essentially be treated like all other union employees or all employees, that if there's going to be a pay increase, that you have to negotiate it with the unions, but and the way things happen now, they're automatically put in, and then when we go through the budget process, we have to start sort of figuring out what's in, who's getting what raises, and I just don't think that's the best process. So, to me, it's sort of misleading in the budget process. And I'll end with this. It makes for a better process when we know what's in it. And, I also understand there is an evaluation process, but let's face it, everybody gets these step raises or these step increases. So I think it's important to take this, to look at this, actually completely revamp this ordinance, and there be no pay increases. There's step increases, and then there's cost of living increases. So that was the reason why I filed the motion. And there also, there's also some other language in here. It still particularly in the health insurance aspect, it still refers to the city's medical indemnity plan rather than the GIC. But primarily, the purpose of this was to give the council more control, no automatic increases, and I think it makes for more transparency.
I believe Councilor Martin also has some opening remarks.
Sure. I welcome the motion and agree that a review of this ordinance is overdue. And I think, in addition to Councilor Elliott's motion, the solicitor herself suggested that to us on several occasions. This was put in, I wasn't here, I don't think, but this ordinance has been sometimes followed, sometimes not. We have the ordinance calls for these sort of automatic increases, yet, in 2003, we had sort of drastic cuts to our local aid imposed more than halfway through the fiscal year. That resulted in some austerity measures with no city employees taking any increases for a period of time. We've just gone through a similar period where no union employees got any percentage increases anyway. And so in this ordinance, really, the percentage increase provisions of it weren't honored. They weren't funded in the budget. And so we have sort of an ordinance that's, number one, confusing, number two, not really being followed, which is never a good situation, and number three, that it's kind of historical and no not many members anyway, the current council know the history of how this came about, what it was I know it replaced a collective bargaining unit of management employees. I don't really want to lose the benefits of what the city got for that, but I don't really know what they were because I wasn't here at the time. So, I think this is a good idea to take a look at this, and so I'll welcome the review, and we'll see where, how we can make some progress here.
Before I ask the manager for what his remarks and recommendations, I know during those negotiations, we were under the impression there was an automatic 2.5% increase year over year, but in the ordinance that I printed out today and reviewed, I couldn't find the language that implemented that, so I don't know if the solicitor or the manager could point us to the section where that's included, but I just saw language that a new salary grid would be brought forward at budget time by the manager. So I didn't see that automatic increase, even though during the negotiations, I believe it was stated several times. The compensation section is 56-8. Well, I could have the manager remark, and then we can come back to that and have the solicitor try, see if she finds that language. So, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and let me echo Councilor Elliott, Councilor Martin. I think a review is long overdue. Councilor Martin mentioned the history of this ordinance, and it does. Was able to pull out some different things that relate to this, and it does go back to 1999 when there was a managers union, COLMA, the City of Lowell Managers Association, I think was its name. And at the time, the council voted in support of dissolving or helping to dissolve that union by putting in place this ordinance that attempted to mirror the COLMA agreement. And the COLMA agreement, in many respects, mirrors other union contracts, or mirrored other union contracts, and the grade and step system mirrors essentially what takes place in every public organization, be it local government, state government, or federal government. The difference, and there are variations, and I recognize that there are organizations that don't necessarily have a lockstep step program. They'll have ranges that people could, there'll be a starting point, a midpoint, an end point that are put in, and there's some flexibility on where people are put within that, and there's all types of variations of that, but essentially the system that is there is the more traditional grade and step system, very similar to what exists in many of our collective bargaining agreements. Almost all of our collective bargaining agreements have the same thing. The difference is, and I do think this, I think to use the term automatic, and I understand where the council is sort of get that sense. The term automatic, though, really isn't appropriate in this case because unlike the union contracts in which it is an automatic, in the negotiations, we bargain a cost of living raise that goes across the whole grade and step system. And then based upon years of service, you move up a step. Each year or in bands of years, years 1 through 2, you're in this step, and years 3 through 4, you're in this step, and so on. This one is based upon evaluations, that in order for the step to occur, we go through an evaluation process. There's an evaluation tool that is utilized that sets sort of standards of performance that we try to put in place. So I don't think it's entirely accurate to call it automatic. Now, honestly, it's very rare that people don't get that step raise because based upon the review, we determine that they have performed. And so we do move them up that step. One change that we have made, and I think this is pointed out in the communication that's gone to the council, is there used to be a pattern, a tradition, I'm not sure what you'd call it, where people would snake up the ladder. I did put a stop to that after, I think January 1st of 2007, when we caught that. What would happen is people would reach their end point of their grade, the last step of their grade, and then the next year they'd be moved up a grade. Go across, hit the max, jump up a grade. Now, brought to its, extreme, you could have a situation where someone comes in at the very lowest grade, spends 30 years here, and by the end of it all, they're up at the top grade and the top step. And someone in a similar job that just comes on and is down at the bottom grade would be paid considerably less. So we did put a stop to that. We now, when people reach their top step of their grade, they stop moving. That has caused some problems. People object to that. And in some cases, I think the objection is warranted, but the grade is the grade, and we stick by that. The reason I say in some cases it's warranted, in some cases I think a salary survey that we would do would show that people have, whatever the position might be, has reached its maximum pay, that it doesn't make sense to pay people more than that. No matter how great they are, a position is only worth so much money. Now, maybe if we added responsibilities or, did something like that, it would justify some type of change. But in many cases, it doesn't. And then there are cases where it does. We know that, and I don't want to use specific job titles here because I don't want to, expose any of this that's out there, but we might say that, competitively within the organization, with union employees and non-union employees, maybe some positions should be paid more so that there's a sense of equity. The other issue is, from a market standpoint, when we go outside, when we have to hire people for jobs, if we're going to hire people, we want to be able to put a salary out there that's competitive, that we can get people. Or if people are in those positions, they'll stay. I mean, when we talk about pay equity, we're talking about internally, but we're also talking about externally, that there's some type of consideration of what the market bears. But, so that's just some general comments on that. I do think that, though, there's some other areas that, I think maybe we should look at the number of grades we have. I think the grade should mean something. Our ordinance doesn't really speak to what a grade means. A grade should have a certain amount of responsibility that goes with it. The highest grade in terms of pay, and you can do it at that being grade 1 or that being the higher number, the highest grade should be the one with the most responsibility, the most experienced people, the most trained people. Those should be your top. And we should be able to quantify that in some way of what it is to be, what that level of responsibility and education experience is all about. And then work our way down from there for other grades. But I think we should look at the number of grades we have. I think we should probably look at the number of steps we have. I still think there's some value in having a step system. Maybe we want to give some flexibility in there. But maybe instead of 2.75% steps, they should be smaller. And, because you add the cost of living on, and then you put the 2.75% difference, that can be a pretty large salary increase for someone. Keep in mind, if the system works as it's supposed to work, when they get to the top, the only thing they're ever going to get after that is the cost of living raise. So if someone gets to the top step in 7 years, and they're with us for 25 years, for 18 years, they're only going to get whatever cost of living raise we give out. So I think that I think we should look at that. Just as a sort of a sidelight to that, I think the information that the auditor provided at the request of Councilor Elliott does speak to the issue that a number of times over the last 7 years, there have been years that nothing has been given. No increase in cost of living, no steps. So they're not automatic, even under those conditions. It's just, we just, if the conditions warrant, I think Councilor Martin spoke to this, we just can't give raises, we just don't give raises of any sort. In fact, one case we actually gave people 3 days off without pay. The other area that I think that to Councilor Elliott's point that we should look at the whole thing, and I agree, sick time buyback. We've been very active with in our collective bargaining to do something about sick time buyback. I think the same should apply. We should try to reflect that same approach that we're using in our collective bargaining process with our non-union or ordinance employees, because that is, there is a certain amount of equity there too. If we're doing it for the union people, we should do it for the non-union people, but we should phase it out over time as we're doing with the unions, and again, that would help us eliminate that liability. So there's work to be done on this, there's no doubt about it. We could do a full-scale compensation classification plan. I know the number of communities have recently completed those. We could do something as wide-ranging as that. We could try to do it more internally. We could do some type of hybrid. But I think that it is long overdue, and I commend Councilor Elliott for bringing forward the motion.
I don't know if we can go back to my previous question.
Under the compensation section, it does reference that the grid system shall be upgraded annually for cost of living increases. And so the two increases that we're referencing, one is a cost of living increase, which I believe traditionally is 2.5%, and the second, which is the merit increase, which is referenced on the next page, and that's under again, under the tier salary system, and that is roughly a 2.75% increase.
But it doesn't specifically say 2.5%. I mean,
No, it
it
doesn't.
might have been
That's-
traditionally been that way. In some years, we didn't have any increase. But the language in the ordinance, I believe, says that the manager will bring forth a new grid each year
Right.
with whatever increase he's proposing. So it's, in that sense, I don't believe it's automatic. The 2.75% step increase when they're given almost a promotion, not necessarily, but moving them up as a result of an evaluation, that one's 2.75%. Okay, manager?
I agree, Councilor. It's none of it is automatic.
Right.
The 2.5 is not automatic, and the history shows over the last 7 years, and I know the prior 5 or 6 years, there were years that nothing was given. And the 2.75 is not automatic because it's tied to an evaluation. Okay. But in those years where it does happen or has happened, then it does, it's that 2.5 on July 1st and the 2.75 on January 1st, which creates a buildup of 5.25%. But the real cost for the year, of course, is less, but it's still a buildup.
So, I mean, one of the things we're concerned about is we were violating our own ordinance by not providing automatic increases in certain years, but it appears that we didn't violate it. It is possible to give less than 2.5% just by having the grid not modified or increased.
Right.
Do any questions?
I was just going to say, the language, however, is the grid system shall be upgraded annually for cost of living increases. That hasn't happened, and so it's not.
Well,
It has been. It's always been implemented in a reasonable and cautious manner, so that, as the manager was saying, if other groups haven't been getting increases, those covered by this ordinance never had an increase. However, the language does speak to as mandatory.
that the grid would be updated, but it doesn't say by how much. That's up to the manager, correct?
That's correct. It just references a cost of living, which I think traditionally has been viewed as 2.5%. It could be something other than that, but there's mandatory language that there would be a cost of living increase.
Any question?
Thank you for clarifying that, because
Councilor
that's...
Elliott?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And that's what my understanding was, that there is that automatic increase because of of this language. So I just had a question. Mr. Manager, you mentioned it was rare that people were not given, I guess, a step grade of promotion or additional step. How many people have been denied?
I don't know, I'm sorry, Council, I don't have an answer for how many people have been denied a step increase based on an evaluation. I do know there are people who have been denied moving up a grade. I have done that. But in terms of evaluation, off the top of my head, I can't think of one, but everyone has to go through the process.
So
But
the ordinance calls it for an annual review, is that correct? I thought I said by December 1st.
Correct.
So, I mean, there's 20 people in this ordinance, but I'm presuming someone, like Henry's not on this list, but there's got to be other employees that are not on this particular list that are covered by this ordinance?
It's
And if
more.
they're
I think
not,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think it's 60.
60?
That number jumps in my head. I have to
And
double
each
check
one of
that.
those individuals they're evaluated every year with a specific evaluation instrument. I mean, I work for the federal government, and it's done twice a year, and there's a specific, I mean, it's an appraisal. So does each individual have an appraisal, or is it just a generic type of?
There is a tool that we utilize. You know, there's some flexibility in that, but there is a standard tool that we utilize.
I don't want anyone filled up, but I'd be curious just to see what that tool is. So it's just one document that everybody uses, correct?
Right, as Mr. Moses points out, there's two. There's one for managers and one for just rank and file.
Okay.
At this point, you mentioned the sick leave buyback and our efforts there. One of the things in reading the ordinance is that it says that the employees covered under this ordinance can get 40% in the buyback, and I thought that it was 33% for most others that have this benefit. And is this different from other unions, or do you recall?
I think just about everyone has the same language on the non-school side. The difference is, and I'll have people here that will quickly correct me if I'm wrong. It's 40%. Police and fire, the maximum is 30,000. Everyone else, it's 20,000.
All right, so that's the,
Excuse me? School is unlimited right now.
yeah, so we have cash limits for the total that they can buy back. Any suggestions on how to proceed?
Well,
I just had, sorry, go ahead.
Councilor Martin?
So what would be the process to try to impose, you'd be looking to impose those caps into a new ordinance, is that, or would that be phased in over time?
What I would propose, and you know, I have a little bit of a history on this issue, and I think I've talked about this. I think Councilor Elliott brought this up at a council meeting one time about the sick time buyback, and I gave the experience that I had over in the town of Chelmsford, where we we eliminated sick time through a freeze-out process and phase-out process beginning in 1992, I think it was, 92, 93, and now pretty much everyone, it's gone over there. It takes some time with the collective bargaining groups and but then we use the same model for the non-union people. And essentially what you do is you phase it out over time. You freeze a certain amount. What we've done with the unions is we've worked out a point in time in which it's frozen for the current employees. For new employees, it's never put on the table. And then people can have the option of cashing it out when they leave, or phasing it out, cashing it out earlier, which eliminates the liability earlier. There's some benefit to the employee that they might be able to take advantage of, but then once it's gone, it's gone. So.
Councilor Elliott?
Yeah, I know, I agree with you, and I have raised this buyback sick on a number of occasions for many years, because it is, it is essentially an unfunded liability in I guess, a pejorative sense, but it's a budget buster, and it's like longevity way back when. And I still think, I don't know how much we still spend on longevity, but that has to have been implemented, I want to say 20 years ago, 25 years ago when it was stopped, or sometime. Are we getting close to?
We might spend 2 or 3.
Not a lot.
We might spend across the city $2 or $3, maybe $4,000 a year on.
And I understand it was a tool back then to keep employees working for the city. This is of some similar nature, and it's a management tool, but sick leave to be used for sick leave. And I don't know, is it $750,000 this year that we will pay out about that, give or take? So, I mean, that is, $750,000 that could be used for streets or for, many other things. And that doesn't mean that we're not providing a benefit to employees when they need sick time. They have it, and they're allowed to carry 75 days. Is that right? Did I see
It's
the ordinance?
unlimited.
It's unlimited.
Unlimited
But
sick
they
time.
they buy back.
Right.
They can buy back 5 days a year. Is that correct according to
Right,
this
there's some,
ordinance?
right, there's some language in there that once they hit 75, they can buy back up to 5 days if they don't use any, or if they don't use it, right?
Right. So, it's time that you have to draw the line on some of these things. We're not trying to take away anyone's sick time. However, if you need sick time, use it for sick time and not, it hurts the budget.
Right. If I may,
Mr.
I
Manager.
like longevity. Longevity in many cases was put in to deal with the issue of steps that had maxed out. Well, when someone maxed out on the steps, we'll give them a little bump at their 5th anniversary and their 10th anniversary, at their 15th anniversary, whatever the case may be. It was a management tool to kind of keep people engaged and keep people here. Sick time buyback, obviously, we know what that was all about, was to try to encourage people not to use sick time. But it is an unfunded, I think it's GASB 34? GASB 34, that it speaks to the issue of unfunded liabilities of sick time. And that's why, again, what we did over in Chelmsford is we started getting rid of it back in 92, 93. And again, it's been a priority of ours this year in the collective bargaining process. Its purpose is clear, but at some point in time, it stops working as that, and you have to find other ways to address the issue of sick time abuse.
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to change gears just a little bit. This is under section 9 in the ordinance, and it relates to the fire chief. State law. Is that state law still in effect, Mr. Manager, Madam Solicitor? General Law 48 that
It's a double.
stipulates the chief shall be paid twice that of a firefighter. Is that?
Right.
Because you do not negotiate the contract with the fire chief based upon this language in here and this language is higher than the state requirement. It's 2.2. It's a 2.2 rate for the fire chief.
I haven't looked at that, Counselor, to see what the current status is. I know we do that. Again, it's old law. That one may still be on the books for under the civil service provision. We haven't looked at that.
I mean, there's no incentive. There's an automatic. This is an automatic pay increase for the chief, and it's based upon contracts that are settled. It used to be that way with the police, and it is no longer. Correct? I mean, the chief of police used to get paid, I want to say 2 times that of the highest paid patrolman or the patrolman, but that's no longer the case. Correct?
That isn't the case here, and I'm not familiar with anyone that's really done that or still doing that. Fire, you still see that floating around out there. But I think that's something that needs to be reviewed.
No, I agree. Again, when we're talking about pay increases, when the language is in here, I mean, that should be taken out and.
Okay. Sorry.
That's fine.
We were just discussing it. May only apply to civil service chiefs' jobs.
Okay.
So we need to follow up on that, but sorry.
All right. That's all I have on that. Thank you.
I guess proceeding forward, I don't know if the manager has any recommendations or would like to prepare some as to how we could modify this ordinance to go along with our objectives in general.
Well, again, I think we're all on this. I think we're all on the same page here that we need to take a look at this. I don't know if we want to go through the process of a classification and compensation plan. That would take a little bit of time. It would take some money to bring someone in. We could look to do it. We actually looked at trying to do this last year, doing it in-house, and we weren't able to really gain much traction on that, but be prepared certainly to try to head down that road again. What I might propose to the subcommittee is perhaps we could come up with a strategy that we could present to the council, to the subcommittee and the council to deal with that. We could price out what a classification compensation plan would entail. That would bring someone in that with a personnel background, and obviously we have our own personnel people here, but there are organizations out there that do this. Some are public entities, some are private, that could do this type of work. As I said, I know a number of communities have recently done this. It would cost a little bit of money, but it would be worthwhile. We can also, my favorite thing is, brilliant people create, geniuses steal. We can steal some ideas from other communities of how they've set up their systems and bring that back to the council. And really, bring this back to the subcommittee maybe for maybe do an hour and a half long meeting on a separate night to walk you through some of the ideas that are out there and try to get this in place, maybe for in time for this year's budget if we possibly could. We're doing a lot right now with the collective bargaining. I think we can fit some of this into that as well. But I would propose something like that. Maybe within the next couple of weeks, we could get something back to the council on that with some ideas of steps moving forward.
Oh, coming into the meeting after having read it, I was looking at the sick leave buyback area and possibly proposing a way that for employees hired, say after June 30th, that we begin to limit further what they could buy back. We could limit the amount to after June 30th, new hires, existing employees wouldn't be affected, that we could limit it to 33%, or we could have a schedule whereby the maximum amount of buyback decreases maybe in 5-year increments. So that's what I was going to suggest, but you might just take that input and come back in a few weeks with how to deal with the sick leave buyback along with how we're going to deal with the grid system itself. I'm not sure what the wish of my colleagues are. Councilor Martin?
That's fine with me. I mean, I guess I'd make a motion to that effect, to just refer this back to the manager for a report that the subcommittee can then act on or refer back again with more detail.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilor Barton to refer this matter back to the manager in order to get a proposal for the grid and how we want to proceed with sick leave buyback provisions in the future.
I'll second that.
Councilor Elliott will second it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion is carried. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's fine. So, Mr. Manager, I don't know how we want to include this in the budget process, but I think it would be important. And I think it would answer a lot of questions during the budget process if this is going to be kept in place or some different variation, that what are the increases and what they're based on. Because we do see side by sides, and I think it's very helpful information that you provide from one year to the next on individual salaries. I think it's helpful to know why and what that is based on, because as you mentioned, some years we're going through and we tell people at home, taxpayers, look, there's no salaries given out for the unions, and then we go through the budget and there are increases for department heads or any of the other 60 individuals based upon this ordinance, whether it's a step and or COLA. And you see that number and you say, well, how can this happen? And which is what brought us to here, that because of this ordinance, that's how it's allowed to take place. So I think it would be helpful to have that information as well.
Yeah.
Angela?
I-
Angela?
Yeah, I think, I do understand, Counselor, and I think that, and I do think that oftentimes what, we do talk about how there's no salary increases for employees, and generally speaking, the cost of living raise for the union people and the non-union people is the same. And so when they get a zero, when the union people get zeros, or the non-union people, I'd have to go back and check every single year, but I believe I've pretty much followed that through. The union people get step increase. If the union people get step increases, we allow the non-union people to as well. But I understand you.
But I swear I can remember, I swear I should. It just seems to me there have been years where, because of the language in this ordinance, our hands were tied where department heads and others, or the 60 got raises and union employees did not. I mean, I guess I'll go back and look at the auditor's report, but
Yeah, there was a great grid, actually, that we used for collective bargaining purposes, some of our analysis, and this isn't it, but I think the auditor has put that together that would address that issue.
Okay.
We'd be happy to get that.
okay. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to be heard on the matter, or things we should consider? No? Okay, I guess we're all set. So we'll, I guess we'll recess
to-
this meeting until the manager, how long do you think it would take you? I don't think we have to do a whole compensation survey, but you may want to consider how we could prepare the grid going forward.
Maybe by beginning of April?
The end of April?
I was thinking, actually, maybe, let me get you a report by the beginning of April, and that will either tell you, maybe we
Okay.
can get it done then, or tell you where we stand with it for completion by the end of April.
Okay.
Something along those lines. Or if we get to the beginning of April and we say, look, we think this is more evolved, maybe we should do the classification compensation study. But let's shoot for the beginning of April.
All right, a report by the end of April. Councilor Elliott?
Oh, I'm sorry, one other thing. Another reason that brought this to our attention was the issue of severance. Is it, in other communities that you may know of, is it a 1 week per year that is the standard for department heads? I mean,
I don't have.
I'd like to take a look at that. I mean, it was a stickling point with the auditor, and I know that's a little bit different. However, I mean, is it a standard in the field that any municipal employees or otherwise have severance benefits?
I don't have a real good answer
don't know
for you
any.
on that one, no. I know that oftentimes the way severance is granted isn't based on necessarily a number of years, although that might have some bearing. It's oftentimes the effort there is to recognize that it's going to be more difficult when that person is removed without cause, that they're going to have to find another job of that similar. So again, it goes to the issue of some of your top level people. If you remove them without cause, just decide to make a change, then there's a degree of uncertainty there that they're going to then have trouble matching that salary as quickly. The idea of severance is that it's going to take, a city manager X number of months to find another city manager's job. So you give that person some type of severance if you remove them. That's the logic and the rationale for it. If you're talking a lower level position, there are more of those positions out there, so you don't have to, generally speaking, you wouldn't give as much severance to that. So it wouldn't be necessarily the years of service, it would be more the perceived difficulty or the identified difficulty of being able to find another job. That's always been my understanding of the concept of severance.
So do any of the, every other union, do union members, any other union members, something, teachers, police, fire, DP 1705, anybody? There's no severance provisions in any of those contracts?
No, severance is usually reserved, as I said, for the people who are in more managerial positions that don't have, and again, that don't have union protection. So, for instance, and I recall having this discussion with another city councilor at one point in time, that if I woke up tomorrow and decided that it was time for a change of a particular department head, there wouldn't necessarily have to be cause. I'd want to head as manager, I'd want to head in a different direction. And that could be done because these are employees at will. Whereas in a union setting, you can't just remove an employee because you've decided to head in a different direction, because there's union protection. Now, you can negotiate a settlement or a separation. You say, look, we've decided to head in a different direction, and we're going to eliminate that position, and you negotiate a severance package. You negotiate the impact of that separation taking place.
I follow you. However, if an employee is doing their job, you can't just arbitrarily say, look, I don't like the way that you spoke to me in a staff meeting. I like the way you, employees are afforded outside of this ordinance.
I say it to Henry every day.
The hair comment. But my point is, I understand it, but if city manager, if you're going to do your job and come in, you have severance. You have severance in your contract and the auditor, but the clerk doesn't. Do you have severance in yours? You don't have a. Do you have a contract?
I don't have a contract.
Okay. Well, let's not belabor this. I think that we need to take a look at it, and does it happen in the private sector? Maybe that's something that we can look at, because what employees have, I think should be standard. And I don't know. If you're doing your job, you do your job, and if not, then that's why you have performance appraisals. That's why you have evaluations, and there's either a steady incline, or you're doing your job, or you're not doing your job. So, I think it's just something that we need to take a look at.
At this point, unless there's further discussion, we'll have a motion to recess until we can get the response from the manager.
So
By
moved.
Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Martin. All those in favor say aye. And
Aye.
any opposed say nay. All right, we're in recess. Thank you, everyone.